Welcome everybody, welcome to Conscious Cafe Global, our offering this evening with Mark Ballabon. We're delighted to welcome everybody. We have a wonderful evening and tonight's unusual title is Climate Change, a Spiritual Perspective, something that Judy and I were looking at thinking this sounds really interesting. So Mark, who's joining us tonight, is a philosopher, author and environmentalist. And he's been writing about personal and spiritual development for over 20 years. And he's the author of many articles and 3 books in particular, which he's going to draw on tonight, which are Courting the Future, Preparing for a Different World, Why is the Human on Earth, which is an extremely interesting question, and Home, My Life in the Universe. So he's also written a coming of age trilogy for young adults and the child within the adult, I would say. He's going to talk more about that. So I'm going to I'm going to hand over to you, Mark, and I'm here to support you. And here we are. We're going to give you a Conscious Cafe welcome applause and greeting silently. Mark.
Thanks, Gina. Thank you very much. And I feel very inspired to join you all this evening. Some of you probably don't know about the Conscious Cafe, but it was inspired by Judy Piatkas. And I was very inspired to be part of its founding. I can't remember how many years ago, but it's probably about 9 or maybe more. I don't know. Judy?
It was nearly 12 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
Yeah.
So there we go. 12 years. It's a bit daunting on this particular call to have your wife on the call and your sister. So that's a bit of a double whammy. That's Joyce Dean, that's my sister. It's a bit of a double whammy because normally you would feel free and all the rest of it. But when you have your wife and your sister, older sister, scrutinizing you, it's kind of ups the pressure a bit. So it really tests you in terms of your ability to truly be yourself and free, live in the moment. Now, what attracted me to Conscious Cafe was Judy, because her authenticity, I'm going to embarrass you, Judy, but don't worry, it won't last long. You can switch off everything if you want. But yeah, what attracted me was her authenticity, but also one of the most treasured qualities of anyone who's on a spiritual journey, which is humility. And she's got a lot of it. And I find that extremely attractive. So, welcome to, I pick up sayings from all over the place. And one of the sayings that I like was the original Harrods saying, the advert for the shop, Harrods, which is welcome to a different world. And I hope on this journey tonight that you'll enter a different world with me, because this is about the relationship between climate change and the human. And it might sound like that's a strange combination to you, but I hope that as we journey through it, you'll start to see how important this relationship is and what it will mean to you. I always hope that when people come away from these experiences, that not only is it enjoyable, is it enhancing, but there's moments of connection at a very deep level that are maybe unusual or maybe rare. And that's what I hope that we'll be able to do together. What I'd like to start with, if it's okay with everyone, and by the way, if you do have complaints or confessions or, you can always leave that to the end or when I'm gone. But how I'd like to start is that, when you're on these Zoom calls, I mean, I know people rave about Zoom, For me, to some extent, it's a bit of a poor substitute for meeting in person. But the reality is that we all arrive at this call from all parts of the globe, all parts of, you know, working life, families, issues, problems. You might have just come after a lengthy argument with someone, you know, whatever. So I always try and have a moment of mutuality where we can come together, and we will be doing a meditation shortly or in a while. But firstly, I'd want to share with you some music. With the band of musicians that I'm in, they're all younger than me. They're much more talented technically than me, but I do quite a lot of composition with them. And this one, which is really funny, we're working on music for different qualities. So this one, we got together at the center in Barnet, and I'd come up with this idea of let's work on qualities. And we had a very sort of animated discussion. And I said, hold on, let's work on the quality of patience. Well, it was really funny what happened next, because there were about 15 minutes of the most impatient dialogue you can possibly imagine. But then something very sweet arrived. So what I'd like us to do, if we could, is I'm going to ask Macarena to play some of the track that we composed. It's called With Patience. We did 3 mixes of it. This one's called the Hawaiian mix, because two of the musicians are now living in Hawaii, and they remixed it back there. But whilst the music plays, I would like to invite you to look at your screen and just scan through the different people, scan through the different faces. I'm really pleased there's people from all around the world here. I call it a mark of mutuality. In a spiritual journey, apart from the development of the quality of humility, one of the most challenging aspects of our daily lives is the challenge of familiarity. That particular impediment sort of has killed off quite a few civilizations in the course of history. Ancient Egypt suffered from that towards the ending of that civilization. And it's a quite insidious prevention, familiarity. And therefore, if we can have a refreshment of looking at all these people, many of whom we may not know, and scroll the screen, because we're going to be on a journey together. And it's a bit like we're getting on a plane together, and these will all be travelers on that flight. So Macarena, if you could play that music and then just look at your screens and go from page 1 to page 2, and just with the respect, respect means to look afresh for each other and acknowledge each other as travelers on this mission together.
Always in the moment, no rush, no rush. The peace that soothes the soul that makes me free, free. Walking through the forest, heel to toe, heel to toe. The wind that moves the trees and moves me on. With patience. With patience. Basking in the stillness.
Thanks, Macarena. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a shame we're sitting on chairs because I had to sort of hold my legs and not move in rhythm with it. It's just beautiful, but that's called With Patience. If you want to find it, it's on our website, which is www.growingtrust.net. And actually, that's a really good introduction to a few exercises we're going to do together. We called the website Growing Trust because we didn't want to make it about the musicians or the band as a first principle. And I'm really excited to go through these illustrations and exercises with you because there's one particular part of the journey which we're going to arrive at soon, which for me has one of the most profound alignments for anyone who is on a spiritual journey. So I'm very excited to share that very soon. But let's start with at the beginning. So Macarena, if you can start to screen share this, and you will soon see. Okay. Now, that's a really interesting image. This is the image that appears on the cover of my first young adult book. Yes, thank you for doing that. This is Leah. She's a 14-year-old girl, and it's really a spiritual coming of age story. But the reason why I wanted to start with that picture is, in a way, it's a very classic posture of someone who's looking into the skies. It's a magnetic attraction. And one of the things that Leah discovers on her journey is not only that the human is made of stardust, but she discovers what it means that humans are made of stardust. She discovers what it means that the iron up there, the sulfur up there, the oxygen up there, the carbon up there, it's here inside us. But she goes a step further to discover what it actually means to say that we're made of stardust. And that there begins her spiritual journey. So I wanted to start with that image. If you go on, Macarena. Okay. Yeah, just one thing I'd want to say about myself. I don't like talking about myself a lot. But there's one funny thing about being a philosopher, particularly as now I'm touring a lot of schools. I've seen thousands of young people, usually key stage 3, so between 11 and about 16. And I often ask them, what's a philosopher? And I've been absolutely amazed to discover that in probably 2/3 of the schools that I've visited, they think a philosopher is someone who studies bones. Now, where they got that from, I don't know. And that isn't just schools in the UK. This is also overseas. But as you know, in the word philosopher, the word philosophy, so it means a love of wisdom. And I've had that since I was a young boy. And I will always have that to the day I pass from this earth. Author, yes, I write books and articles. An environmentalist, yes, I'm very, very passionate about the environment. And one thing I just want to put as a notation at this point is that people often ask me, well, what can I do for the environment? And I always say, start at home. You know, start with yourself, this home, start with the home you live in, and start with your environment, your environment. And I do quite a lot locally here. One of the things I got funded to do was to produce this, which I don't know if you can see it, but maybe not. It's a study on air pollution. We live on the Greenbelt here in London, and it's a study on air pollution. I love the science in the climate, and we're going to have an interesting little quiz on that coming up soon. So let's move on and see what we got next. Now, one of the big mistakes I made on my spiritual journey, have a look at this. I hope you get the humor in this. If we're sinking, why are we hundreds of feet up in the air? So that's climate change skeptics. And when I went on Twitter very naively, and I was pushed by my publisher to go on Twitter, I very naively sort of said some very nice things about people who are passionate about the environment. And then you find yourself getting trolled by climate deniers. And they are a very strange group of people, really, very strange group of people. But that kind of fits with it. If we're sinking, why are we hundreds of feet up in the air? It kind of reminds me about a very famous president of a very large company, a country, who was interviewed when he got off his private plane in New York. And he said, I don't know what all this fuss is about global warming. He said, it's absolutely freezing here. It was winter. You know, so yes, we have our fair share of climate skeptics. By the way, I was going to say one of my biggest mistakes when I started teaching in personal development when I was young in my 20s was I had no humor. And it was only when I tripped over a carpet and my microphone flew into the audience and they all burst out laughing that I actually got the point that a bit of humor might actually be quite a good idea. Okay, so let's continue the journey. Okay, so here we go. This is kind of fingers on the buzzer time. I'm going to show you some climate terms. There are 13 very basic terms used in the climate change or climate science discussions. These are very basic terms. And I'd like you to tell me how many of these terms you know, which will help me as we go on. So if you put them all up there, Macarena, there's 13 terms there, okay? And they are quite basic terms. Let me just get everyone on gallery. Here we go. Okay, so now I've got you on gallery, I can see. So could you put your hand up? I can see you, by the way. I mean, we could do, if you know how to do reactions, we can do this if you click on reactions with your hand up. So who knows all 13 terms? Can you put your hand up, your yellow hand or whatever color you want? Okay, so we don't have anyone on that. Could you put a hand up if you know 10 or more of those terms? Okay, so we got one, we got a couple, well, we got a few more hands. Put your hand up if you know between five or more of those terms. 5 or more of those terms. Okay. So I'm not going to embarrass anyone by asking who knows 0 of those terms, because I'll have to sort of put you in some sort of outside room, in a waiting room, until you've swatted up, and then we'll let you back in. But let's just, if we unmute everyone for a moment, we won't have time to go through all these terms, but I'd like you to tell me, put your hand up if there's a particular term that you'd really like me to explain. A term there that you find absolutely fascinating. What the hell does that mean? Can you put your hand up if there's one you'd like me to explain? I can't see all the hands. Can you put a yellow hand up? Click your yellow hand on the reactions at the bottom. There's a term you'd really like me to explain. I can't see any hands. 9,
there's 10 hands up.
Oh, Gina, could you pick one of the hands?
Just for somebody to speak, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll choose Drusilla.
Drusilla,
do you want to speak? Because we're looking at your slides. It's not so easy to see the gallery, Mark. So Drusilla, go ahead.
Yes, please. I'd like to know about the albedo effect. Never heard of that.
You never heard of that? Okay,
Yeah.
so really, it's a really important aspect of what's going on with the climate. Really, really important. And the albedo effect is to do with, I'm going to try and put this in very simple terms, it's to do with the reflective capacity of a material substance. In other words, the most obvious example is the Arctic and the Antarctic. Now, in normal circumstances, which has been the case certainly since the last ice age, 11,000 years ago, those caps have provided a really important surface area of reflectivity of light. But because of global warming, they've started to melt. So their capacity to reflect has been reduced. And therefore, when sunlight hits those two polar regions, more of it is absorbed, meaning there's ice melt, there's sea ice melt, okay? And that opens up areas of both polar regions which should never have been melting. They should never, you know, you've got carving of massive glaciers and so forth out there. You also get, I haven't put it down here, but what's called a positive feedback loop. And what that means is that sunlight, instead of being reflected, it goes into the seas, it melts the ice, it contributes to global warming. So it's a positive feedback loop, meaning you get a worse effect because of what is happening because of the global warming. And that's happening everywhere. It's the same where we live in the green belt. This was meant to be the lungs of London. And because there's so much development here, it's having the opposite effect, that instead of carbon being sequestered into the land, it's actually, you know, making the pollution worse because the soil can't absorb because it's concreted over. And then you get more cars and so on and so on. Positive feedback loops are one of the most dangerous signs in climate change at the moment. Okay, so that's, you will be examined on this at the end of this session. And those who don't make it will never be invited back again. You'll be put on a special blacklist. But I would encourage you, particularly the Keeling curve we'll look at a little bit later, just to get to know this. And if you're not that interested, then get to know it because of the young people that you may be in your life, who, believe me, and I've met with thousands of them, they are so passionate about this. And most of them, I find, have a better knowledge of the science than some adults do. So it's good to get to know these because they really do describe the science on climate has been really, really well done, particularly by the IPCC over many years. And the picture that it paints is compelling. Anyway, if you found that one difficult, we'll just move swiftly on. So Macarena, if we can go to our next point of journey. Okay, so this is another one, finger on your buzzer time. Okay, how long will some common items take to break down if left in the environment? Okay, now don't show the next part. Let's start with a lettuce leaf. Okay, have a think to yourself, how long, if I put a lettuce leaf, I don't think you can see my back garden here, but if I put it down on the ground, think to yourself, how long, or in your garden, if you've got one, or the park, how long will that take to break down if it's left in the environment, a lettuce leaf, okay? Next thing is, how long will it take if I'm wearing a cotton t-shirt, it's organic cotton, which will break down a bit easier, but if you put a cotton t-shirt on the ground, how long do you think that would take down? Just make a note of it, okay? If you're having a can of Coke, I don't know why you would drink a can of Coke. It's pretty toxic, but saying you were to, and you threw the aluminium can down on the ground, how long do you think that would take to break down in the environment? Okay. Say you put a leather pair of shoes also, how long would that take? And lastly, you know those styrofoam cups that you get in, you know, takeaways on service stations? If you put that on the ground, how long would that take? Okay. All right. So think about what you wrote, think about what you put down, and you can now measure this against the facts. Macarena. There you go. And there you go. Now, I don't know how well you did on that one. I don't know, you know, we can have a confession session at the end if you really feel bad about how you did on that exercise. But there it is, and it's quite shocking. It is quite shocking. We ordered an organic turkey for Christmas last year. They delivered it in a polystyrene box. So I phoned up the company and said, what on earth are you doing? Do you realize how long it takes for this box to break down? They said, oh, we're sorry, you can reuse it. And I said, no, it doesn't work like that. Styrofoam breaks up, and once it's in the environment, it doesn't break down. They put their 500 years to forever because they actually don't know. I would choose forever. And as you may know, if you study the science, there's a lot of chemicals being released that are not certified or have never been checked as to their effects in the environment. And they're called forever chemicals because they don't know how long it will take to break down.
Mark, we've got somebody's hand up. Do you want to take a question now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We won't be
Brenda, do you want to ask a question? You got your hand up, unless it's not up from before.
Yeah, Anna.
Brenda, are you? If Brenda doesn't respond, then it's a mistake.
Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead. Okay.
All right. Now, one of the challenging things about living a spiritual life and looking at this is you think to yourself, hold on a second, is it all doom or gloom? When are we going to get for the hopeful part? Well, on a spiritual journey, you don't have the luxury of those two options. It doesn't work like that. For someone who's on a spiritual journey, you're always looking into so much of a bigger picture. You're looking at this from a universal standpoint. So you need to know the dangers and the tipping points and some of the reality, because we are literally facing extinction. I know it sounds like a throwaway thing, but we actually are as a human tribe on this planet. On the other hand, yes, there is hope. But tonight is about a middle path, which you'll see as this unfolds. Okay, now then, let's just see, I think, okay, no, could you go back, Macarena? Could you go back? Let's, can you come out of the PowerPoint and so we can see everyone? Okay, we're gonna go deeper now. So if we were meeting together, we would, you know, we would stand up, we would do a little bit of movement, a little bit of breathing work and so on, but we'll do this sitting down if you want, or you can do it standing up. We're going to do a little meditation because I find it really funny, people talking about, you know, I am spiritual, he's not very spiritual, we're all spiritual and so on. And I'm not sure anyone knows what they're talking about anymore, but never mind. This is, you know, everyone's spiritual at birth because the spirit is lodged within the human. It is inactive unless it is given the plasma or the fields in which to expand and grow. And actually, you know, I can see a few people here who have children or maybe who have had children, but that spiritual activation happens automatically when you're born, because you're still connected from the place of your birth, which is beyond this planet. You've still got that spark. That's why when you're sitting on a train in the underground and there's a mother there with her baby in the pushchair, everyone is looking into the baby's eyes. Everyone smiles. Sometimes with the longing of that spiritual connection that they no longer have and that they hunger for, because that baby still has that connection and its eyes are full of wonder. And it's unlikely that baby will focus on you, because it's usually the brain that keeps determining our field of vision. But for young babies with that spiritual connectivity still alive, they don't have that. They're not looking through their brains like we often do. They're looking from the whole unseen worlds of what they represent and where they came from. So we're going to do one of the most potent and simple meditations, and it's called the butterfly meditation. I won't go into all the forensics of it, but I hope you're going to enjoy it. I wish we had more time to do the full working of it. But we're going to do two things. We're going to prepare for it, which will just take a short time. And the preparation is called pairing. Now, we have two hands, and the two hands emit different kinds of energies from them. The left hand in men and the right hand in ladies is more negatively charged. And in men, the right hand is more positively charged. Okay, and then the left hand in ladies is more positively charged. So the first part of this exercise is called pairing, because what it does is it brings the positive into completely positive and the negative into completely negative. So the balance is in these two hands, so that these two hands become balanced. So don't worry about the technicalities of it, just feel it. So if you take your two hands up like here, hold them in front, and just sensitize them for a minute by doing that, you know, like a finger popping. Just pressing down like that, fast if you can. Yeah, lovely. Oh, good. No one's shy. That's excellent. Okay. And then just bring your hands together like this, not completely. See if you feel anything between the hands. Okay, you may or may not. Don't worry about it. But if you do, just work with it. Just play with it. Just play with it. If you feel the energies coming out of both your hands, just play with it for a minute. You can expand it. You can grow it. Yeah. Don't forget that the majority of a human being is completely unseen. Your feelings, your knowings, your instinct, your intuition, your mind, your mentality. And now turn them this way, horizontal, and just move them like this, which is a different type of balancing. Now, lastly, take your hands like this. Now, watch me. We're gonna touch thumbs by putting one hand in front of the other, like that. And then we're going to make a butterfly. Excellent. Wow. I can see this is a very skilled group. Maybe you've done this at some point in your life. Exactly. Thanks, Joyce. Then bring it gently to your chest, just underneath your throat. It's a very powerful exercise. You don't need to hold your hands there long. I want you just to monitor your breathing. If it's a little bit stressed or if it's a little bit jerky, just take one or two just deep breaths in. And long breaths out. And now, think of a quality that you really need in your life. Wherever you are at this stage of your life, think of a quality that you most need. Could be resilience. It could be care. It could be self-care. Think of a quality that you most need and meditate on it just for a short moment, just for half a minute. And keep relaxed, keep breathing. Then slowly bring your hands down, please. And just monitor how you're feeling now. There's a lot of science and technology behind that simple meditation, but it is designed to enhance all the systems, refresh them, and center yourself. One of the reasons it's called butterfly is it's also one of a series of exercises that I do towards change, real change. So, Macarena, let's continue our journey, but now we're going much more into the spiritual aspect. So we're going to go deeper. Okay. Can you move to the next one? Okay. So this is an article that I wrote for Kindred Spirit. And I thought to read you just a few paragraphs on it because it'll lead into the next one. I basically wrote it because I got fed up with hearing people talk about, you know, we're all spiritual, we don't like religion, science and religion, and all. It just, for me, it's just a load of nonsense. They are so interconnected. But of course, when you look at it from the brain's perspective, the brain likes to separate them out. But we're not just our brain. A brain is a mortal part of our human assembly. The mind, the mentality, the intuition are part of our higher faculties. And when it looks at these domains, it sees them as an integrated whole. So what it's saying, I'll just read out the first bit. It says, let's get one thing straight. Spirituality, religion, and science are probably the most misunderstood, misinterpreted, and mistreated, my eyesight here, words in the world. It's because of their power, and we know what happens with too much of that. Their distortion has probably caused more trouble in this world than anything else. Yet their true appreciation has inspired the greatest of human achievements. You say science, and people often imagine studious, white-coated, bespectacled people, heads down in laboratories. You say religion, and people tend to make a sharp and worried in-breath as they think of conformity, dogma, and being emotionally lectured at. You say spirituality, and an image is conjured up of people blissfully meditating or devouring self-help books. But how important is it to you to discover where the truth lies? In the year 175 CE, the Roman emperor and great philosopher Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "For any particular thing, ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature? That's the first principle. That's where the truth lies. But mostly people come from the second principle of what has been done in the name of spirituality, science, or religion, often with horrific outcomes. We won't find the truth there. Truth lies in the cause, not in the outcome. So let's start far away from any prejudice, any cultural or classical definition, and look at what these three words actually mean, because otherwise we end up in a nonsense debate about whether a person is spiritual but not religious, or religious but not scientific. All three are absolutely interconnected. All these are faculties within the university of being human, as we shall see. And then I go on to describe the core essence of what is religion, what is spirituality, what is science, you know, which is a million miles away from the way that they're characterized these days. So we're going to get into some spiritual thinking, and in this evening to do with the climate. Okay, Macarena, let's move on to our next port of call. Okay, here we go. Now, put your hand up on this one. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you'd say about this. So people say that this is the biggest issue facing humanity. Okay. And it's certainly one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue facing humanity. And if you study the science, you know, there is no question that it is. But what is causing it? So can we have any show of hands here? Someone, if you put your yellow hands, and Gina, if you can help me here, what is the main cause of climate change? You must have thought about this. And if you haven't, you'll be put in the waiting room immediately. So anyone want to have a go at this one? Gina, have we got any hands?
Looking for a hand, just looking around the...
And don't be shy. It's not a test. It's not a trick question. It's not an exam.
Marianne, yeah, go ahead, Marianne.
Can we spotlight Marianne?
Well, you've got your PowerPoint on, so let's have a look, see if I can.
Okay, don't worry. Don't worry, Gina. Marianne, what is the main cause of climate change?
I'd say the main cause of climate change is our attitude, our state of mind.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marianne. Anyone else? What is the main cause of climate change?
Catherine Ash?
Lack of appreciation for the world we live in, and our own lives and environment.
Thank you, Catherine. Anyone else?
Yep, we've got Ursula.
Yes, I'd say it's misplaced creative urges.
Okay, and one last one, please.
I'm just adding an Ole, Johannes. Yeah.
Ole.
Looking to see how I can. I can't spotlight you. Okay, Ole's not speaking, even though we've got a hand up and I've unmuted for some reason. It's not working. Joyce Dean.
Go on, Joyce.
Unmute yourself.
Done. Okay, I'm unmuted. I think the main cause of climate change is that people don't want to change. They find it too difficult to change. It's inconvenient to change. And therefore, they just want to carry on as they are because that's a much easier option.
Right. Thank you. Okay, well, that is very disappointing. Very disappointing, because I was hoping that everyone would sort of say something that wasn't the first principle. And we seem to have, Judy and Gina, an extremely connected and intelligent bunch this evening who seem to be completely switched on about this. So I'm very pleased that you got it right, but disappointed because I don't have the opportunities to sort of push back and say, no, 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 no. So that opportunity having been denied me, let's click on this one. Now, look, this, if there's nothing else that you go away with after this evening, this for me is the most powerful insight on any human journey in a life. And it's to do with first principle, second principle, and third principle. Okay, first principle, second principle, and third principle. It seems so simple, but you'll see how powerful an insight this is. And I hope you're with me on this one as we go through it. So when you want to understand anything, like that saying from Marcus Aurelius, you're trying to understand the cause. Any spiritual seeker has to be guided by the first principle. If not, that's where misalignment happens. And truth, people talk about the search for truth. Truth is always in the first principle. And that's the difference between truth and facts. Facts are not a first principle. They're a manifestation of the first principle. Okay? Facts are a second principle. So the first principle, anything in life, why did your marriage break up? Why did you get promoted? Why were you successful in this? Why does someone get angry with you? And you're always looking to understand it from the first principle, which is the causing realms. Okay, next one. So this is how I'd characterize what you each said. Actually, you each said it in very coherent ways. But this is how I would summarize the main cause of climate change. Disconnection from any purpose higher than self. Now, I've been in enough discussions about climate science, and people talk about population explosion. People talk in this context about consumerism. But the reason that consumerism is consuming our future is because of that first principle. Because if there's no purpose higher than self, then your purpose is yourself. And if your purpose is yourself, then you will consume, and that's what selfish is, selfish. In other words, not like yourself. So that's a disconnection. That's how I'd characterize the first principle of the cause of climate change. But I have to say that Marion, Catherine, Ursula, and my dear sister Joyce were spot on with what they said. It's all of those things. Thank you. Okay, let's look at the second principle, cause of climate change. Process. Now, when you see that words in black, you can use this first, second, and third principle in anything. It's a grid. I call it a grid. You can apply it to any aspect of your life. So second principle is process. So what does that mean? Macarena, click on the next one. Human activities. Okay, human activities, it's what we do and what we produce, and our demand for more and more and more, and our enslavement to GDP, if you're if you're in a government, it's human activities. We just want too much, and we don't seem to be satisfied with the too much, particularly in the Western world. So human activities. And the third principle, which is to do with results, is a culmination of the Industrial Revolution. So when you look at the climate science, you see that the last couple of 100 years, you look at all the graphs, everything in the last 200 years starts going like that. And we'll see a graph on that a little bit later. It just goes off the screen. The Industrial Revolution, nothing wrong in principle with having an Industrial Revolution, but not when it leads to the mass production of things that people think that they want, but they don't actually need. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, this is non-linear, multi-dimensional. First, second, and third principle always work together. Okay, let's move on. A spiritual perspective. I'm going to whiz through this one because it would take too long to articulate it. But let's look more deeply at the spiritual perspective. Let's go through these, Macarena. The next one. So the first book that was mentioned that I wrote, Why is the Human on Earth? So that's a question I had when I was 8 years old. And when I was in my 30s, I wrote a book about it with a team of illustrators who illustrated it brilliantly with exercises, because that spirit, soul, body connection, that's, if you like, the network, the main network of the higher part of the human, spirit, soul, and body. Okay, there's a huge difference between the spirit, soul, and obviously the body. The spirit and soul are often used interchangeably, and they're completely different unseen worlds faculties in a human. On another occasion, if anyone's interested, we'll have a whole evening on the spirit and the soul, and I would enjoy that. Let's move on. The mind mentality connection, it's the same thing. People often use mind and mentality interchangeably, and they're absolutely not. They're two different faculties that work in partnership in the human. The mind in terms of the composition of thought, and the mentality in terms of the filtering of that thought. And I mentioned courting the future because it's that connection that featured in that particular book I wrote. And the last one. Now, intuition and instinct. I've worked on intuition and instinct as part of my own personal development for a very, very long time. And there are two amazing faculties in the human. And it's like anything else, like at this gathering we're having here. This is intensive, but it's a workout in the spiritual gym. That's what we're into this evening. And the intuition and instinct are the best guides you're ever going to get if you listen to them. And often people don't. They dismiss an intuition. They dismiss an instinct that they have. And they're also very different, but they work in partnership. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper, if you can, if you're still with this. These are two, I love these illustrations. They're from Home. So that's my young adult book. And obviously the picture on the left is our planet, but also with a little bit of a hint of the magnetosphere of the planet. And the picture on the right is someone in meditation. It's actually Leah, who's the main character in the book. And I want you just to look at how close these two pictures are. Why do you think, what is the direct relationship with those two images that you're seeing? Can anyone say or have a go? Gina, any yellow hands?
Looking. Somebody wants to put their hand up. Oh, looking. Not so. Oh, hang on, Ursula. Ursula, I'm going to spotlight you.
Ursula, what's the relationship between these two?
I think it's the electromagnetic atmosphere.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sums it up very neatly. They both have an aura. They both have an aura. And in both cases, that aura is being depleted simply because of the way we use our energies. And we don't use them in a holistic way, not often. And so the magnetosphere of the planet, or the astral light of the planet, is also getting depleted. And the human aura, both protected by a sheath, in the human case, the auric sheath. In the planet's case, you have the electromagnetic sphere itself, and you have ozone layer. You have, we'll see in a moment how these two connect in more detail. But this is so important for your own development, because people ask me a lot, you know, how can I connect more deeply with nature? Well, you go inside first. And when you go inside, which is why I call the book Home, this is one of the homes that we have, though that interconnectedness inside yourself naturally connects you with the planet. And therefore your experience with nature will be a much deeper experience. You won't see the tree as something out there and something that you here. You will see the interconnectedness, including the interconnectedness of all trees. So next, Macarena. Now here's one of my sayings. Everything we do to ourselves and each other, we do to the planet. And you don't have to think too much about it to see that the internal inflammation, like the civil war that goes on inside a lot of people these days, leads to external anger and violence with other people and leads to a whole destructive frame of mind, which then plays itself out and destroys biodiversity, natural habitats, and so forth. Let's go on. This is an essay that I wrote in that book, Courting the Future. I'll just read the first bit of it. Macarena. Climate change is often cited as the single most important issue facing humanity. This is the message from climate experts, leaders, and organizations the world over. But what does it mean? How do we get to a situation where after over 2 million years of human evolution on this planet, we now have a window of perhaps only a few years to limit the damage humans have done to this earth and thereby to themselves? And can the damage ever be reversed now? Why is the human race destroying the planet? Could it have something to do with the way we treat ourselves and treat each other? The equation is simple. When humanity becomes increasingly inhuman, destructive, and divorced from its true nature and purpose, we increasingly destroy the natural worlds around us. Now, that's a simple truth. Unfortunately, it's not very widespread in the world. That's why I'm hoping that groups like ConsciousCafe can be a real, you know, force for change, which I'm sure you already are. Let's move on. Okay. Now, I'm just going to whiz through this one because I don't want to sort of blind you with science. But again, we're looking at this relationship. Keep going, Macarena. This relationship, keep going, with the planet and the human. This relationship is crucial now because the very existence of the human, it sounds crazy to say it, but we're living in the year 2013. It seems almost insane to be able to say these things, but they're true, that internal climate is destroying the other. And as you probably know, if you're a health practitioner, you're in healing, the inflammation, internal inflammation of all kinds is one of the major causes of internal dis-ease. And of course, that directly affects the planet. So let's just whiz through these ones here. Keep going, Macarena. So this troposphere, this is the small breathing belt, I call it, where all the weather conditions and everything goes on. It's only 16 miles high, and it's a tiny layer protected by the ozone layer around it. And this is where we are doing the most damage. Now, this affects the planet's magnetic fields and its ability to filter. Go through to the next one. And this is one of the things that are going on. I mean, that was the planet close to when I was born, and this is what it's like now. Okay, people often forget, but the rubbish that we're doing is all around, from the skies through to the earth, through to the oceans. Let's go through it. This is important. I mean, you may think it's a horror story, but it's simply the truth. And it's important to know. Maybe you know these things already. I don't know. This is desiccation in the Aral Sea. In the book I wrote, Home, one of the protagonists, Tongi, comes from Chad. And I chose Chad because Chad is like the crossroads of everything that is destructive, but also positive about what's happening in our times. Destructive because a lot of the pollution in Africa is actually not generated by Africa. It has a low carbon footprint as a continent, certainly as compared to China, India, or America. But this is the net result. I've just come back from Spain 2 weeks ago, where I was invited on a tour of international schools. And the hotel I stayed in, La Viñuela, which overlooks a reservoir, I was there 9 years ago. I went 2 weeks ago when I was there, the reservoir had halved. The hotel, the ayuntamiento, the municipality, wouldn't give the hotel enough water to even water their grounds properly. So they chose artificial plastic grass, which is utterly insane. So I had the manager out in my first 5 minutes of arriving. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so one of the interesting things about this, I mean, it's a horror story because the last part of that line that you see there is based on the Keeling curve. And the Keeling curve was a recording of atmospheric carbon dioxide charted or registered from a scientist in Hawaii from 1958. And it's curious because on Twitter, which I am now an active member, some of the young people, they don't put their date of birth. Like Greta Thunberg, if you look at her Twitter feed, she puts the parts per million atmospheric CO2 when she was born. Okay, let's move on. The current level is unsustainable. Greenhouse effect you know about, I'm sure. Let's move on. So let's now focus on the human climate. And what we're now about to see, if you keep going through this, Macarena, go to the next one. So this is unsustainable. We now have 8 billion people. It's twice the amount of population than when most of us on this call were born. And the next one. But this is the internal climate. This is affecting the planet's climate. Just keep going next and next and next. Keep going through these. This is the internal climate, and this is why all of the kind of renewables and all the solutions aren't working, because unless you do something about this climate, it's almost irrelevant. All these, renewables is another conversation, but they're very, very limited as to their ability to actually bring change. Let's go on a bit further. Next one, Macarena. Okay, so let's look at the spiritual path to being climate positive. You may not understand why I've used the word climate positive, but I would want you to leave this call feeling very positive about the changes you can make to your own internal climate and the changes you can make for many different things that you can do with the environment around you. Climate positive is also a technical term used in climate science, and it means taking away more greenhouse gases, more atmospheric CO2 than we actually generate. So net zero, in my humble view, net zero, all these net zero targets, they're absolutely insufficient. You have to go one step further. Okay, let's have a look at this next one. Grow your relationships. This is a step to become, and you'll see why in a moment, why that's such an important step towards being climate positive. Next one, Macarena. So here's a truth. Every relationship that you will grow in your life depends on your relationship with yourself. So get to know your inner unseen worlds, your spirit, your soul, your mind, your intuition, and be kinder, wiser, and calmer with yourself. Now, you may say that's a high ideal, but every small change, it's like Mr. Tesco, every little bit counts. Every small change that you can make where that's concerned, your relationship with yourself, is going to make a difference to your internal climate from the moment you wake up to the time you go to sleep. Let's move on. Next. So spending more time in nature, appreciating nature, use all your senses, go on forest walks, hiking, open water swimming, gardening, fall in love with the planet and her fresh air, trees, animals, flowers, and the way she takes care of you and feeds you. One of the things I actually do like about Twitter is you've got some environmentalists. They post the most amazing pictures of the natural worlds. Just extraordinary little videos of animals playing, really high definition photos of the most extraordinary plants and flowers growing around the planet. Fall in love with this planet. You know, we can talk about renewables all day long, but unless we reestablish a connection with ourselves and with the planet, real change isn't going to happen. So let's go to the last one on this series. Question, just keep going, and I'm just going to let you look at them. I'm not even going to read them out. Just click through each of them while I just check on the time that we've got left. Oh dear, we don't have much time. So I'm just going to leave that there. We're going to need to move on because unfortunately we're running out of time. So I need, can you just go back, Macarena? So I need 3 volunteers. We're going to do a little bit of theatre here, and you'll see why. So I need 3 volunteers. It's all right. You're not going to have to answer difficult questions. You just need to read. Actually, I need 4 volunteers to read 4 parts of a scene from home. We need 4 yellow hands.
Put my microphone back on. 4 yellow hands. Well, Caroline's a yellow hand. Caroline Dale. Andy Billings has got his hand up. That's 2.
And sorry, Andy. So Caroline, Andy, yeah.
Caroline, Andy. Matthew's got his hand up. That's 3. And I'll see if a 4th person has put their hand up. Brave enough to take part in this.
It would be good if it was a lady who put their hands up.
Well, okay. Anja, if I've got your pronunciation correct. Oh, she's taken a hand down. No, she hasn't. Sorry, my screen's moving out. Okay, Anya. I'm thinking I'm correct.
Okay.
So we've got 4. Do you need me to spotlight them?
Yeah, cool. Oh, well, that would be brilliant, actually. If you could spotlight them for a minute.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. So if you can drop the PowerPoint, Macarena, and let's just spotlight our 4 characters in this play. And you'll see why we're going to do this little play in a moment. So we're going to spotlight Caroline, Andy, Matthew, and Anya. I just need to tell you what parts in this play you're going to be.
I'll find Matthew, sorry. Matthew, you've taken your hand down, but I'm going to spotlight you.
I can see Matthew.
Spotlight. Okay. And who's the 4th person?
Anya. You've got Caroline, Andy, Matthew, and Anya. Okay, so whilst Gina's doing that, I'm going to tell you who you're going to be watching here. Now, they haven't done any rehearsals, so they're going to dive in the deep end here. So Caroline, the character that you're going to play is Kaylee. And Kaylee is a very authentic climate activist. Okay. And you're having an argument with Anya, who's playing the main character in Home, which is Leah. Okay. You're having an argument. You're at summer camp and you're having an argument about a film that you want to make. Now, Caroline, who's playing Kaylee, wants to make a film about the climate crisis. Anya, who's playing Leah, wants to make a film about home. But Matthew is going to sort out this conflict between the 2 of them. He's playing Tongi, who's a youth leader from Chad. Okay, Matthew, so you're going to be playing Tongi. And Andy you're going to narrate basically what Leah is thinking as this scene progresses. So stay with this. Can you highlight those 4, Gina?
I've highlighted 3, but I can't highlight Anya unless she puts her camera on. It won't allow me to do it.
Okay.
My camera's not working. I'm very sorry. I hope
That's
it
okay.
doesn't. Yeah.
Okay, so we do have Anya, but we can't see her.
Okay. All right. So now, here's the scene, right? Caroline, who's playing Kaylee. Kaylee is very angry. They've got 5 days to make a film. Kaylee wants to do this film about the climate crisis. Leah wants to do the film about home. They've been arguing for 2 days about it. In comes Tongi to sort out this conflict. But listen to this carefully, because these are 2 important philosophies that characterize our journey this evening. Tongi is going to sort them out. He's the mediator, and you're going to hear Andy do the narrative. So here we go. If you can screen share now, Macarena. Okay. So here we go. So Caroline, give this a bit of welly. If you unmute Caroline, Andy, Matthew, and Anya, if you can do it. If not, just unmute everybody. Just follow this through. And Andy, you're going to be reading the narrative in between, in bits in white. Tears for Tongi. Try and get into the part and really get a little bit passionate, because this is a very feisty scene. So go ahead, Caroline. You're Kaylee now. So start off at the top. It's more about. So Tanguy's asking Kaylee, why do you want to make this film about the climate crisis? Over to you, Kaylee.
Okay, it's more about the climate crisis than climate change. It affects every single person wherever they live. Our planet is hurting and having difficulty breathing because her skies, land, and waters are suffocating from our pollution, our industries, wars, the lifestyles we expect and demand. We are 100% causing this crisis. We've surrounded this earth with our rubbish, our clouds of poison, and over the last 2 centuries, the heat from the sun has increasingly got trapped. We've given ourselves and the planet the worst fever since life here began. You can't take from nature without giving back, and we just take. I think we're facing extinction, for real. You might not like that word, so check the science. Check out what the 6th mass extinction means. And it's us and the next generation who will inherit the hell that this paradise is being made into. We only have this one planet, so the climate crisis is the most important issue. And that's why I want to make this film.
Kylie's voice was trembling by the end, and she couldn't go on. I may not have liked her, but I loved what she said. It was powerful and authentic. Everyone was captivated. Tongi was following every word.
You're muted, Tongi.
Matthew, unmute.
So you're saying, Kaylee, that unless there is more urgent action on climate change, unless we treat it as a crisis, it will be impossible to live on this planet. You're saying that we have no other home.
Well, yes.
I can't see it, I'm afraid. It needs to be raised up a bit, please.
Is there any more text?
Yeah.
Text?
Okay, let me just finish that page because it's an important moment. So Kaylee says, well, yes, she said, nodding uncertainly. She seemed reluctant to call the planet our home, but she couldn't deny it and didn't push back. What do you think, before we go on to the next page, what's going on here? You've got Katie's put in this really forceful argument for why she wants to work on this project to make a film about climate change. No, go back, Macarena. And then Tongi, who's trying to mediate this conflict, says to Kaylee, you're saying unless there's more urgent action on climate change, unless we treat it as a crisis, it'll be impossible to live on this planet. You're saying that we have no other home. Do you see what's just gone on? Leah wants to make a film about home. What's just happened? Don't forget, he's a mediator. Anyone realize what's just happened in this scene? Any hands there, Gina?
Just double checking. Somebody called narrator has got their hand up. As has
Me.
oh, sorry, you've changed your name. What about Leah?
Yes.
The one without a camera. Carry on, Leah.
Well, yes, I'm part of the play that's now going
Oh,
on.
sorry,
but-
the hand. Sorry. Okay. So, okay. I don't see any additional hands to.
Okay, so let me.
Frenny has got her hand up.
I can just see Frenny now. Yeah, lovely.
It's showing they're coming for the same thing from different perspectives. It's home. It's our planet. Our planet is our home.
Exactly.
So they're saying the same thing, but from different viewpoints.
Exactly. Now you'll see why after you hear Leah, you'll see why this is so pivotal, because most of the conflicts and arguments we have in life is because we're actually talking about a similar thing from a different perspective. And if you want your spiritual life to remain intact, you need to be above the two in what I call the third vector. Okay, and particularly about this issue, because this issue is polarizing nations around the world. So Tongi's saying that you're saying, Kaylee, that we have no other home. And Kaylee admits and says, well, yes, but she's nodding uncertainly because she seemed reluctant to call the planet our home, but she couldn't deny it and didn't push back. Next page, Macarena. So let's see how this ends. Tongi. Matthew.
So, Leah, why do you want to make a film about home?
I closed my eyes and tried to go deep inside myself. What did home really mean to me? This was about much more than a film.
Anya, Leah.
Yeah. I know people think that where they live is their home. Of course, I live in London, England, part of the UK, part of the world. But then our world, our planet, is also part of the solar system, part of a galaxy, part of a universe. It's all connected, isn't it? So when I see the moon or stargaze, I'm looking into the universe. That's our greater home. Does that make sense?
More silence.
My friend Maya once explained to me that what's out there is also down here. As above, so below, she said. Like there's oxygen up there and we breathe it down here. And there's iron up there, but also here in our blood.
Okay, thank you. Let's go straight to Tongi. Your blue bit in the middle. Unfortunately, we're running out of time and we need to get to this last point from Leah.
Right, I think I'm following you so far, but what will be the message of your film then?
Asked Tongai, narrowing his eyes as he rubbed his chin.
Well, if we don't understand that home isn't just our local address. How can we feel a part of the world or a part of the whole universe? And if we don't treat the planet as our home, how can we protect her? If we can't protect her, we have no home.
Okay, so I hope you get to meet these different characters through this story in Home. But Leah says at the end, if we don't treat the planet as our home, how can we protect her? If we can't protect her, we have no home. And the message of Kaylee is react against the problem. The message from Leah is respond. All the activity, all the strikes and demos and all the rest of it, all the reactivity has caused quite a minimal change. But Leah's saying, look, can we go inside? Can we not see that there's a home inside here? That we live on a planet that's our home, that the universe is our home. So Leah is on a spiritual journey. It's a spiritual coming of age. And those two different approaches are both very complementary. And if you're dealing with people about the issue of climate change, you need to be able to understand both viewpoints and have a higher one. So we're going to go to the last part, which is some music. If we go to the last, Macarena. Okay, so just before we play this music, this is going to end our journey. It's gone so quickly, and thank you very much, everyone, for participating. We had about 20 other things planned, including breakout rooms, but hey-ho, we got there in the end. This is a piece of music. I composed the lyrics to this, and the Trust Companions, the band, played this. This is a conversation between a person who's on a spiritual journey, their conversation with the planet. There's lots of messages in it. I'd like you to just contemplate the words as they come up, relax and enjoy it, and then we'll have a few minutes for any last-minute questions.
Change the climate in me first, to change the climate in me first, to let my spirit to the universe.
Thank you, Macarena. You can take the PowerPoints off. Thank you very much. I love the spirit of that and the message of it too. I don't think we've got any time for Q&A. Just check with Gina and Judy. I don't know if it's a strict cutoff point at 1.5.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes. I don't know, we could maybe Macarena could open up the chat in case people want to just put comments in what they've taken from today. If anybody does want to make a comment or ask a question, let's just make quick space for that. Somebody might put their hand up. Somebody else may feel they want to say something.
Gina, what I'm also going to do, because of the lack of time, is something I've never done before on a Zoom. I'm actually going to send my email address. I may live to regret it, but I'm going to send my email address because, you know, questions in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 2 minutes, So that's my email address. If you've got something that you'd want to ask, you can send it to me there. We can take one or two now, but I like to take time with answering questions, but I guess we can take one or two if you put your yellow hand up, or whichever color you choose.
I think you've taken people on quite the journey tonight, and we've had some really interesting graphics and sound and play, many different kinds of interactions. It's an unusual way of doing it, but I suppose it brings it to us, this important conversation in many different levels, doesn't it? Rather than just the listening, it's engaging in the narrative, in the story, and listening to the music and feeling the creativity and the beautiful imagery of how our inner selves and our bodies relate to the planet. So speaking on behalf of people here, I think you've given us much to think about.
Well, let's leave it
tonight.
Yeah, let's leave it there then, Gina. Thank you, and Judy, so much for hosting it. Is there anything else, Gina, before?
Well, I'm just going to ask, you've given people your email, and you mentioned those books. Maybe Macaroni put on a link for where people could find those 3 books that I introduced at the beginning that you referred to. I think you gave your website, but maybe the website could go back up again.
Yeah, I mean, the best place, I just put the names of them. The best place is, you know, Waterstones, or if you do buy from
support your local bookshop.
Support your local bookshop, which is great. So absolutely.
Yeah.
It's also available as an ebook as well as
Okay, great. Well, people can explore that. They have your name and they have the book names. Mark, thank you. Thank you for all the work you put into that presentation. Thank you for the work you do, for the openings here, opening people's minds. It's been quite the journey this evening. That's great. And we can applaud, can't we, folks? We can wave, we can do this and say thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention. I really hope you go away with something